if a simple test done at birth could mean the difference between life and loss? Today's episode of Reconnection is one that is hard to hear, but even harder to ignore. Elisa Segar's son, Aiden, was born healthy, but by first grade, he began losing his vision. That was the beginning of a devastating diagnosis, adrenoleukodystrophy, or ALD, a rare genetic condition that can progress rapidly without early treatment. Aiden passed away at age 7 years old, and then Elisa learned something new that no parent should ever have to hear. A newborn screening test for ALD already existed, but it wasn't being used. Before we start, I want to share something personal. Aiden has the same name as my 4-year-old great-nephew, and listening to the story, it really brings home just how close this is to any of us, any child, any family. In this episode, Elisa shares Aiden's story and how she turned the unimaginable loss into advocacy, helping pass newborn screening for ALD in New York, and is now working to expand screening to nationwide through Aiden's Law. She's also leading a new effort, Surge to Save Newborns, focused on closing the gaps that still exist today. Because in the United States, where a baby is born can determine whether a condition is caught early or missed entirely. This is a conversation about loss, but it is also about action awareness and the fight to make sure no family has to go through what Elisa did. But before we jump in, if you're listening on audio on the audio version, there's a send me a text link in the show notes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, especially after you hear Aiden's story. If you are watching on YouTube, you can comment below. Elisa, what is ALD in simple terms?
Sure. So ALD is an X-linked condition that unfortunately I'm a carrier of, but I was not aware when I became pregnant, and Aiden passed it on to Aiden. It's a metabolic condition which affects all neurological functioning, everything from vision, hearing, walking, talking, eating, until you're in a vegetative state and ultimately death. So it is a very severe condition. There are different forms. The cerebral form is the most devastating. Then there's AMN, which is a later onset, which affects mobility and incontinence and different things. And then there's also some males will have adrenal insufficiency, which just means that their body cannot handle stress and they will need to take hydrocortisone to supplement what their body does not make.
Mm-hmm. So did this progress all the way to the other conditions, or is this all?
So with Aiden, because ALD is a later onset condition, it's not something that is visible at birth. It usually does not present before the age of 4. Aiden was 6.5 in first grade, and prior to this, we had no reason to believe anything was wrong with him. He met all of his milestones. He did really well in school. He played sports. He liked to play chess, believe it or not. And in the latter part of first grade, he started having some vision issues, which we spent some time going through the diagnostic odyssey, going to ophthalmologists, pediatric ophthalmologists, retina specialist. and finally to a neurologist, which on a physical checkup didn't think anything was wrong with him, but did order an MRI. And that was the first time we heard about ALD or adrenoleukodystrophy. Um, it's demyelinating, so it affects the brain. And that was visible in the MRI. And when he was diagnosed, it was significant. They have ALD has a scoring system, which is called the less score, and his was pretty high, meaning that the damage to his brain was already done. And once that happens, you really can't go back and fix it. Um, we were eligible, well, Aiden was eligible for bone marrow transplant. We actually went to Minnesota for workup and then to Duke in North Carolina. And we moved our family down there so he can have bone marrow transplant in the hopes of saving his life. Um, Unfortunately, he spent the last 10 months of his life living in the hospital, and he was 7 months at Duke and then 3 months at NYU in New York, where we're from.
Um, let's see. What were you said Aiden's first signs were the vision. Did you anything
Yes.
notice anything else early on?
He was having some issues, which I think again contributed to the vision. His writing was not in a straight line on the paper. It was kind of writing on an angle or off the page. But I think again, of course, that was attributed to the problems with his vision.
Mhm. Um, let's see. And I know you said you went to a I know you went to a vision specialist was the first place you went.
Yes,
And
because he thought, of course, oh, he just needs glasses. It's not a big deal. Um, but we were very wrong in that.
yeah. Um, what do you wish you had known but what do you wish you had known before when he was born?
I wish that newborn screening for ALD was available and being used in New York in 2004 when he was born. But that's not the case. And that's why we had no idea that he had this silent killer. If we would have known at birth, Aiden could have been monitored and treated before the onset of symptoms, therefore saving his life. But we were not able to do that. And by the time physical symptoms appear, it's usually too late to intervene with a viable treatment method.
Hmm. So, um, this was much later, but I also read that that Aiden that I where you said that Aiden's blood type changed um, from O negative to A positive. Can you explain how this happened?
Sure. So with bone marrow transplant, he did have a donor. And once you have a donor that's used during bone marrow transplant to hopefully stop the progression of the disease, your blood does change to that donor um, that you were given during bone marrow transplant.
Hmm. And so, don't they test for that?
Tests for,
The blood type.
yes, they did test for the blood type, but this was his donor match. So this is what was used for the bone marrow transplant.
Hmm.
Mm.
So, why do newborn screening programs vary by? See, jumping into this is a different topic here. Uh, why do newborn screenings vary by state?
There's so many variables by state, and I learned that after Aiden's law was signed here in New York. Um, we started the foundation in late 2012 after Aiden's passing, with our number one focus was newborn screening. We wanted to ensure that other families and other children did not go through what Aiden did. And in New York, it did take a couple of months to get that up and going. Um, but what we've realized over, doing this work for over a decade is that funding is really the number one reason why states cannot move forward. There's many conditions that we can be testing for right now, and the holdup is the funding that goes
Mm-hmm.
with that.
Mm-hmm. So, what causes the delays in adopting recommended screenings?
So, as I mentioned, the number one reason is funding to the state. Then there is other issues. It's personnel. Do they have the right personnel to do the work? There's reagents that are needed for the specific tests. Um, it might be a space issue. Does the lab actually have the space to add a new condition? Um, yeah, is it equipment? Depending on what the test, they might not be able to put that test with others that they are already testing for, so they might need a new piece of equipment. But when you put all of those things together, you realize that that all takes money, right? And if they don't
Mm-hmm.
have the money to do that, they can't move forward with adding any conditions.
Mm-hmm. So, I see. Can you explain Aiden's law and what would change? What it would change?
Sure. So we advocated for Aiden's Law, as I mentioned, starting in late 2012. And we had a bill both in the Senate and the Assembly in New York. And we were targeting members of the Health Committee to have this signed. We were successful, and it was signed March 29th of 2013. And what Aiden's law does is it adds that test at the newborn screening lab. So every baby born in New York State has been tested as of December 30th, 2013.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're trying to expand that nationwide also.
Yes. So after that happened, I realized, well, what about the rest of the country? I feel that every baby born in this country deserves the same chance at a normal, healthy life. It should not depend on your zip code, whether your child lives or dies. So we did start advocating in other states. And as of today, we are testing for ALD in 48 states. But you can see how slow the process has been. It's 13 years later, and it's been a very slow process to get to the 48 states, and we still have two more to go.
So, what seems to be the challenge there?
As I mentioned, the number one challenge is money. Some states just, need legislation or have different barriers in place. But yes, it's been a slow process, and as a smaller organization, um, just a lot for us to tackle.
Mm-hmm. So, what does Surge to Save Newborns aim to fix immediately?
So the Search to Save Newborns is modeled after the Special Diabetes Program that came about in 1997. So it is funding that is directed to do research and help with diabetes and find cures. So using that model, what we're trying to do with the Surge to Save Newborns is the same thing. We're trying to have money go directly to the states so they can implement sooner rather than later. As of today, it takes a decade or more before 50 states are testing for any condition that is federally recommended. And when I say federally recommended, a condition is nominated to what used to be, which is now not in place, the Secretary's Advisory Committee on Heritable Disorders. That committee would then review the condition, vote on it to make sure it fulfills the main criteria being, is there a valid test for the condition? And is there a viable treatment in place once the baby is diagnosed? Those are the two main elements of what they're looking for. So once the evidence review has been gone through, the Secretary of Health will sign off on it, and then it can take, as I mentioned, a decade or more before 50 states are testing, with the main reason being they don't have the money to do so. So the Surge to Save Newborns, we had a study done, and the study came up with not only all the conditions on the RUS, but two more conditions that have not been nominated and approved as yet. So that dollar amount would be approximately $35 million a year for 5 years. So $173 million total. And that would ensure that every state is RUSP compliant, and RUSP is the Recommended Uniform Screening Panel,
Hmm.
which is under federal supervision. So that's what we're looking to do. And we are hoping, of course, this model is successful so we can keep that going. Because of course, there's many other rare conditions coming through the pipeline, and we want to ensure that every condition that can be tested for is tested for.
Right. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Every Life Foundation, but they have a newborn screening boot camp. And one of the things they mentioned at the first newborn screening boot camp that I went to, they actually mentioned that some of these conditions are picked up on accident.
Yes,
Uh, so it's kind of uh, great. So
yes,
because I know some conditions uh, they'll never test for that
right.
are uh, just fluke that they actually happened.
But
Um,
it's so important to pick up those secondary conditions as well, just because if there's not a treatment right now, the earliest diagnosis can help with that, right? And
yeah.
help also the families not live through a diagnostic odyssey and give them that information at the earliest possible moment where they can put whatever is already established care to at least have some quality of life and hopefully, right, look into possible research or treatments for the
Mm-hmm.
future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually know somebody who was actually misdiagnosed, was actually diagnosed by a fluke by one of those flukes. So it's
Okay.
um, what can listeners actually do after hearing this episode?
I would love for listeners to go to the website Surge to Save Newborns, write to us, help us advocate. There is a letter on there where you can sign up and it will go directly to a member of Congress, depending on where you live, to support this. Because I think the general population, newborn screening may sound self-explanatory, but it's really not. I had two children. I didn't have anyone come to me and say, I knew that they took drops of blood, of course, from both of my babies, but they didn't come to me and say, this is what is going to be tested for at the lab. This is what is federally recommended. So there really isn't any information about that. And what we're trying to do is ensure that every baby is tested for as many conditions as possible so they can go on to live a normal, healthy life. So I would just say, go to Surge to Save Newborns. If you'd like to contact me, go to aldalliance.org. Yes, we need as many people as possible to help us with this effort. And help to get our voices out there and ensure that this happens.
Yeah, I know you're involved in like I think it was like three different nonprofits.
Yes. So we have the ALD Alliance, of course, which is what I started with, and then the Newborn Screening Alliance, which I started probably about a year and a half ago, which is more of this general newborn screening work, because I'm just very passionate about giving the diagnosis to families at the right time. And I don't think my condition is more important than anyone else's. I think we just need to advocate and work together to ensure our families are getting the right diagnosis when they can
Mhm.
actually do something about it.
So, can you talk any about the other your other foundations?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, the ALD Alliance, what I started with, we started that in late 2012. Our primary focus, newborn screening, but we also have other um, elements that we do. We do have an annual meeting, which brings together physicians, families, newborn screening programs, and industry. So we're together for 4 days. Basically, we start with a roundtable on Wednesday just to talk about newborn screening. The 2 days, Thursday and Friday, are usually the full day of presentations specific to ALD, and that can cover family stories, any advances in neurology or endocrinology, um, presentations by our industry partners and what they are doing with treatments, and then presentations from newborn screening programs to let us know how they are doing with the implementation of ALD, how they are telling families of the diagnosis, if they're having any issues with the testing. And then the Friday into Saturday is just for families. So we try to have some time together to just have our families come together and have that time to converse with each other and know that they're not alone in what they're going through. Um, The Newborn Screening Alliance, as I mentioned, is something newer that I started a little over a year ago, because a lot of the work that I've been doing is helping other conditions move through the process of being added to the recommended uniform screening panel. Um, and I just feel very, very passionate again in ensuring that our babies can be tested at the right time. So with that, Surge to Save is part of that initiative, as well as working on Newborn Screening Saves Lives reauthorization, which has not been reauthorized for many years due to privacy issues with the dried blood spots. And then also working on a replacement for the Secretary's Advisory Committee, which was disbanded back in April last year. So having meetings with HHS and trying to work on those three specific initiatives for newborn screening to change the landscape of it.
Mhm. So, when you see who's who's championing the bill, who's in charge of the bill, or who
Of
introduced it
the
on
search.
Surge to Save?
So we don't have a bill as yet. That's the next steps. We're working on the bill language and finding our champion to basically introduce this and yes, hopefully make it happen. But we have a lot of patient advocacy groups that have signed on to support Search to Save. I have had meetings with HHS to make them aware that we're working on this. Um, so just trying to put all the pieces together.
Okay, so what about Aiden's law? There was I know
Well,
there was that one had a I think that one was already introduced.
yes, so that was introduced in 2013. That was signed March 29th of 2013, and that actually went into place December 30th of 2013, where every baby born in New York State started being tested for ALD. So that was added to the panel December 30th of 2013.
Great. So, and you said it's in 48 states now?
48 states right now. So we're, very excited about that. And hopefully we'll be at 50 at the end of this year. At least that's our hope. Um, yeah. And just trying to help families with wherever they are in their journey, whether it's an early diagnosis or a late diagnosis, unfortunately, which still continues to happen in states that have not adopted ALD newborn screening until more recently. So we still have those calls, which of course are heartbreaking. Um, yeah. So again, our goal is to make newborn screening more uniform and cut down the time to implementation from 10 years or more to 5 years or less with this funding. So that's our ultimate goal.
Mhm. So, this is a question I missed, I think. How many conditions today still rely on early detection but lack equal access?
So, I mean, it varies by state, but as an example, Alaska is 8 conditions behind, which is
Wow.
a lot of conditions.
Yeah.
Most states are maybe 2 or 3 behind just because MLD and DMD were added in December. So they are going to take a little bit of time to be implemented in a state, right? They need to do their processes of validating the condition and making sure that they can add it to their daily screening. So yes, but 8 is a big number.
Huge number. I want to thank Alyssa for sharing the Aiden story and for turning such devastation, devastating loss into a mission to protect other families. Episodes like this are hard, but they matter because the reality is newborn screening can save lives, but only if it is actually used. If this conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to learn more and get involved. I'd love to I have I'll have information in the show notes about Surge to Save newborns and Aiden's Law, so you can see what's happening in your state and and how you can help. And as always, if you found value in this episode, please make sure to follow Rare Connection and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Rare Chef. You can also follow Rare Connection on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn, and stay connected to continue the conversation. And before we go, I want to remind you you are not alone. If you or someone you know is struggling, you can call or text 988 in the United States to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. My next episode is the 75th is my 75th episode of Rare Connection, and we will be talking about Friedreich's ataxia. And the episode will be live on my YouTube channel, Rare Chef, and it will be filmed on Wednesday, April 22nd. Thank you for being part of this community, and I'll see you next time on Rare Connection.